Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nature Source Care. My name is Dr. Fonda Goldman. I'm a naturopathic physician. And today's talk, I was going to discuss the healing power of a daily routine, which you could also think of it as Ayurvedic Dinacharya. So, Ayurveda is a traditional Indian medicine, and Dinacharya means daily routine. So, let's take a look. Excuse me. The reason why I was thinking about this topic is that I've been talking to a lot of my patients about it recently. I always talk about it with my patients, but especially recently because I think there's a lot of chaos going on in the world, and so it's really showing up in people's lives in different ways, and so a lot of people are out of sorts, and so this is actually one of the things we talk about in terms of helping them to feel more kind of settled and that sort of thing. So, so why daily routine? I mean, I've just given you sort of a general example, but having a daily routine really helps to regulate and calm the nervous system. So, especially when somebody's feeling stressed or out of sorts, or like ungrounded, or overstimulated, or overwhelmed, this is a good thing to turn to. Um, and so the thing is, when we're able to establish a routine, some sort of routine, what it does is it kind of creates containers for our life and for our energy. And so just by having a container, um, excuse me, what this does is it tends to prevent our energy from being so scattered. Okay. So from an Ayurvedic perspective, again, traditional Indian medicine, when somebody's feeling that way, like overwhelmed, scattered, confused, anxious, that sort of thing, we would consider this to be a form of vata, or that loosely translates as wind. Okay, so when somebody is in a windy state, they're like the wind. The wind sometimes blows hard and fast, like a tornado, and sometimes it's really nice and gentle, like a summer breeze. Okay, but the thing is, the wind is variable. Okay, the other thing is the wind is subtle. You can't always see, the wind. You can see the effects of the wind, like leaves blowing on a tree, but you don't always see the wind. Okay, itself. So especially when wind is a consideration, and this might be constitutionally, somebody might always sort of be in a windy state or be prone to a windy state, or again, if there's a lot of change, like there's even that phrase, you know, blowing like the wind and things like that. If they're in a state of change, and this might be acutely, like maybe they changed their job, or maybe they're in a new relationship, or maybe they changed their house, or maybe they're traveling, then wind goes up for all of us. Okay. Now, for people who are earthy by constitution, they're pretty good with wind. Actually, they could probably use a little bit more wind because earthy people, kapha people, tend to be more settled naturally. So sometimes they need a little, movement, which brings wind, which wind brings. But people who generally have quite a bit of, wind or vata, they can get really discombobulated and kind of lose their center. So what happens is when we create some sort of daily routine, and the thing is, again, vata people, windy people, from an Ayurvedic perspective, have the hardest time establishing routine. Because they're always sort of like fly by the seat of their pants, they're like blowing around like the wind a lot of times, okay? But the thing is, when they're doing that, they're actually responding a lot of times rather than like choosing and reacting. Choosing a response, they're just sort of like going with the flow, which is great. There are a lot of great things about that. Being spontaneous, being flexible. So there's a lot of great things, but when it's too much, then it can be a problem, and people don't feel like they're able to think clearly. They're not able to move forward. They're not able to make decisions. They're not able to stick with things potentially. Okay. So the other thing about creating a daily routine is that there's less decision fatigue. Okay. Because again, if somebody is windy by nature, they're probably fairly open to different ideas. Okay. But the thing is that every time you have to make a new decision, it stresses out your nervous system. It makes your, at least it may not always be stressful, but your nervous system has to do work. Just by having to work and make decisions all the time, that creates a sort of stress. Okay. So it's kind of like these, excuse me, high level people like, there's famous examples are like Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and then also Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple. They were notorious or famous, depending on how you look at it, for always wearing the same thing every day. Like Steve Jobs would always wear like the turtleneck sweater, and Mark Zuckerberg would always wear the hoodie. Okay. Now, the reason why they do this is that they understood on some level that it was a strain on their nervous system to have to choose like a different outfit every day. Now, some people love doing that. That's great. And they find joy in it and all this sort of thing. That's great. But, just as one simple example, a daily habit, it's like, where are you putting your energy? Right. And so sometimes it's like, okay, maybe the outfit's like, yeah, get your outfit formula down. And that's one less decision you have to make every day. You can just be in like automatic mode about it pretty much and save your energy for other things that are more important. So overall, when you have a container, it tends to create less drag on your nervous system because not only, I just talked about like what clothes to wear every day, but what time to wake up, what to do when you get up, when to have breakfast or lunch or um, that sort of thing. And a lot of people have a habit of just sort of jumping in bed and doing stuff, like maybe doing stuff around the house or just, getting ready for work, and they're running out the door, but their energy isn't settled or grounded. Okay. So having daily routine can help with these things. Okay. And create a little bit of structure and groundedness. And through the structure comes groundedness. So the other thing is having a daily routine helps to regulate hormones. So not just the nervous system, but especially stress hormones, because again, it can potentially be stressful, to, day by day, minute by minute, choose, what you're going to do or make a decision. And some people are better at making decisions than others. They're much more clear and decisive. Other people, it's like confusing to them. Okay. So by not only does creating a routine decrease stress hormones, but it also helps to regulate like the equilibrium system. So like sleep cycles and hormone cycles. Like they've shown in studies that like nurses who do swing shift, right? They change their hours. Like sometimes they work day or evening or night or whatever. They actually have increased levels of infertility because when their brain is not regulated, when their sleep cycle is not regulated, then it affects everything. It's like basically like a signal to the central nervous system that things are not settled and grounded, and so it's not necessarily a good time to have a child. Yeah, you can kind of think about it that way. Okay. Or not an optimal time. Again, people are doing this all the time. But you know, if there's like a general tendency there, then again, throwing off the nervous system and by not having a regular schedule can affect things even on a deep level like that potentially. Okay. So also having, again, our daily routine helps to clarify and prioritize. So I started kind of talking about this with the, getting dressed every day example, but, it's kind of like, where are you really investing your energy? So, um, are you making conscious decisions about that? And sometimes it comes down to clarifying, who you are or who you want to be, what kind of goals you have, and then prioritizing them. So that again, you're not scattering your energy. Yeah. And some people scatter their energy almost as a defense mechanism. If on some level they don't feel like they, should or are deserving to be successful and reach their goals. Okay. So, yeah, so it can be a little bit self-sabotaging in a way. Okay. So, when you can think about it this way, when you have a container of time, like you have, 2 hours, instead of like, oh, I have all day and potentially next day and all week or whatever, then it just having that definition of time it gets you in a way to start thinking about, okay, well, I only have 2 hours. Okay. So what's the most important thing for me to do with the time? Okay. As opposed to like, oh, I kind of feel like doing this or I kind of feel like doing that. And again, there's a balance. Okay. And I'll talk about that. Like some people can get too rigid with their daily structure, daily routine, and that can be a problem as well. Okay. But for people who have no routine, especially, or very little routine, getting a little bit more can be helpful again in terms of grounding their energy, clarifying, feeling less stressed and overwhelmed. Okay. So also, you can also think of this idea of having like these containers of time as, again, not just like what's important and, what do we prioritize, but I think a lot of people these days, they don't think of, they kind of, almost take for granted that they have endless amounts of energy. Okay. And also, like a lot of people have this like idea that they need to be constantly productive and doing things all the time. Okay. Um, but the thing is that another way to think about that is we have a certain amount of vital force. Okay. And they talk about this like in yoga, is that we only have like it kind of counts. You only have like a certain number of breaths in your life. Okay, and this is part of the reason why they talk about pranayama or breath control. Because if you can slow down how often you breathe, you can potentially extend your life. Okay, now that's, a little bit much for a lot of us, but, they do talk about these things in terms of what it does, even having that kind of conversation, whether you buy into it or not, kind of redefines or reconceptualizes how we work with our energy. Okay, if you think of it as vital force, as something that's precious and like, it's like you're, basically drop by drop, minute by minute, decision by decision, your vital force energy, that special magical energy that keeps us all alive. Okay. And this is like beyond like being on a respiratory system, like in the hospital or whatever. I mean, there can be like a mechanical way of keeping the body alive. But when we're talking about that, like the special magic that animates us, that's what we're talking about, vital force. They call it prana in Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, or chi in traditional Chinese medicine. Okay. So when we start thinking about containers of time, it can help us potentially prevent misuse or squandering of our vital force energy. Getting very clear, potentially, about who we are, why we're here, like on this planet. Okay. And what our, not just goals are, but potentially life mission is. And once we get really clear about that, a lot of things kind of fall to the wayside because we're like, is this supporting me, in my life mission? Okay. And again, just having these containers of time, it naturally tends to organize not just time, but energy, self, and life. Okay. But this is different than, I don't want people to start thinking of this as like a time management tool, like in the sort of business sense of it, of like becoming more productive. Okay. It may be that you find out when you have these containers of time, like one of these containers of time is just to, relax and rest and let your nervous system revitalize itself. Like a lot of famous people actually do that. I think like even Oprah, I read one time, Oprah, who could be infinitely busy and has her own network at this point. She, had her own show and now she has her own network. I mean, she's a busy lady potentially, but apparently in her calendar, she marks off 2 hours a day. She has a container, 2 hours a day where she does nothing. She's not held to anything so that she can let her nervous system relax and maybe she can tune in and she can stay balanced. Because otherwise, a life like that, there's like endless things she could be involved in and endless responsibilities, but she maintains balance that way. Okay. So, this sort of thing, having a daily routine also can potentially keep us from not being tuned in, right? Where you can kind of like start living off the fumes of your activity, especially if you're like a workaholic type sort of thing, very driven. Okay. So having some sort of daily routine helps to prevent potentially burning out or crashing out. So it's almost like slowing down or putting a little more organized in a time way helps us to actually have more sustainable in our lives. Okay. Then there's also, well, okay, so now I have on the slide like two different other scenarios. So it might be that you feel stuck or understimulated, okay, in your life. In that case, which is probably a case of too much kapha or earth energy where you're too grounded, as I mentioned, kapha and vata are kind of, earth and wind are kind of different in that way. If you're feeling stuck or understimulated, sorry, got something stuck in my throat. And I actually tried to hydrate as much as possible before starting this talk, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way in terms of the timing, since we're talking about timing. But if you're feeling stuck or understimulated or bored, then maybe you need to change your routine. Maybe you have too much of a routine, okay, and you need to find something a little new to stimulate. Okay, things. Maybe you need to change up your routine for that reason. It could also be that you're fairly rigid about your routine. Okay. If you're rigid about your routine, and maybe you are in this sort of like, how do I become hyper productive mode? That's usually a sign of excess pitta or fire. Okay. And again, if you know Ayurveda at all, there are three major imbalances: too much vata or wind, too much pitta or fire, and too much kapha or earth. Okay. So again, people who are like super rigid about their routine that's a display of excess pitta or fire. Okay, and whenever you have fire, there's always this kind of edge to it, this kind of intense edge to it. Okay, so the thing is, when somebody's like really stuck in a very rigid routine, they lack flexibility. So even if they can just let go a little bit, or maybe maybe one of their containers is like 30 minutes to do nothing if they so choose. Maybe that would be a way to introduce some flexibility into their routine if it's, again, too rigid. Okay. So when we talk about daily routines as, something to focus on, usually what I talk about with my patients is either starting, whichever's easier, focusing on a morning routine or an evening routine. If possible, morning routine is what I usually suggest. Okay. But if for whatever reason evening routine's easier, I would go for that. Okay. So the main thing is we just want to start planting the seed of a daily routine. Okay. So in the next slides, I'm going to talk about what those daily routines might look like or include. Okay. So the morning routine. Now, again, remember, these are just suggestions. You have to fit this for your own lifestyle. And you can try these things out. Okay. And some things will stick and some things won't. The other thing is what you want to do is maybe pick like one or two things on this list and start there, really get that solid. And when that's solid and that becomes like an automatic thing, then maybe add on like another habit. Okay. So this is going to be potentially a process. It's not going to happen all at one time. Okay. But the main thing is that you create this consistency. So maybe start with one thing or two things, and after a week or two, you'll have another thing or two. So maybe after like a month or two or three, you'll have a pretty good, fairly solid morning routine. Okay. The other thing to note is that, this routine might change with the season because our activities and the amount of light in a lot of places in the world changes. So changing with the season is called Rittucharya. Okay. All right. So the first thing in the morning, setting a time to wake up. Okay. Now, ideally, same time. You have to adjust for daylight savings time if where you live observes that or not. Okay. And the other thing is that if you have a hard time waking up, you might use something like full spectrum light bulbs, because full spectrum light bulbs will help to, again, mimic the energy of the sun, which will help to, again, if you use the full spectrum light bulbs at the same time in the morning, will help to regulate your, again, internal equilibrium circadian cycle. Okay. Now, the thing is, Ayurveda does have specific times that they suggest depending on your constitution type to wake up. Okay. I don't typically get into this because for most people, this is just way too early. And it's too hard of a change for them. Okay. You want to do this slowly, gradually, in a graceful, gentle way. Okay. And especially if you work second shift or night shift, like me, waking up at 4:30 is just really not an option. Okay. So, my brain, I've worked second shift for many, many years. And so my schedule is acclimated to a second shift lifestyle. Okay. And I don't like to change it. I mean, once in a while I have to get up early for certain things and it really throws me off for the rest of the day. And I don't push, deep into the night, because again, it throws me off. Okay. So, again, take all this with a grain of salt. But again, just so you know what Ayurveda suggests, you know, take it or leave it or play with it. Try it out. And if it works for you, great. If not, that's fine. Look at some other things on the list. But for Kapha people, Earth people, 4:30 to people, 5:30, and Vata people, 6:30 a.m. Okay. Part of the reason why, excuse me, is that during this time, hold on a second. Okay, sorry about that. The reason why the times are pretty early, again, for most people, um, is that this time when the sun is rising is called Amrita Vela. So it's a pretty special time. They usually suggest, spiritual activities to be done during the time of either sunrise or sunset, because it's a natural time where there's kind of a thinning of the veil between the material world and the spiritual world. Okay, so if you get up at 8 or 10, we're waking up like at the productivity time of day, because the sun is higher in the sky typically, and the sun is going to be energizing, but again in kind of a pitta way, so like a goal orientation way. Okay, so anyway, something to consider potentially. Okay, now before you even jump out of bed is to set your intention for the day, and this could be like saying prayers, potentially, if that works for you. But the idea is to stay in your own energy and to stay in, start your day with a, kind of a spiritual or deeper intention rather than, again, just like jumping out of bed and reacting to whatever is going on. Okay. So also, like, staying away from devices. Like a lot of people, the first thing they do is they'll jump on their phone and check messages or, jump on the internet and that sort of thing. So, again, because the reason why the staying away from devices is important is that, again, it takes you out of your own energy and you start, reacting to what other people's putting out, whatever other people are putting out there, instead of staying in your own energy, centering and grounding in yourself, and making decisions about not only what are you going to do, but like where are you going to put your attention. Okay. So still in bed, setting your intention, maybe saying your prayer, but again, staying in your own energy, staying away from devices. And then after that, washing up. So going to the bathroom, then washing like face, eyes. And this could just be like splashing water on your face, especially if your like skin's very dry. A lot of people overwash their skin. Um, Mouth, teeth brushing, maybe tongue brushing as well. Maybe gargling to clear the throat, rinsing the nose. Again, even just with like water, sometimes if that works for you or helps to clear things if you have like sinus issues or whatever. And some people like putting a little bit of like warm oil in the ears, like sesame oil, can be helpful. Okay. So cleaning up basically yourself. And then after that, you might actually clean up a little bit, small area of just gentle tidying, not like a major clean out project. It's going to take hours and hours, but something that's just like kind of, again, bringing some fresh energy, organizing energy to your space. And it might just be like one corner that you're going to be in for the morning. Okay. Or one corner where you're going to do like a little bit of stretching or have your tea or something like that. Okay. Just to, again, bring fresh, bright, organizing energy to the space, clearing it out. Like, like a lot of people, I mean, I'm like this is like if there's too much clutter, I can't even think, like it just is too much of a distraction somehow. So, then, and it might be, while you're, cleaning up, but, you want to think about the first beverage of your day. Okay. Now, this is really important because, again, most people, if they've been sleeping for whatever, 5, 6, 8 hours, they haven't had anything to drink for quite a while. And so, usually when we wake up is when we're the most dehydrated. So, for most people, having a glass of warm water before anything else that you eat or drink, like tea or coffee, whatever, is really important. Okay, because especially if you do tea or coffee that has caffeine, that's actually going to dehydrate you, and especially if you have like sugar or something in it, it's going to dehydrate you more. So you're already waking up dehydrated, and then you're drinking something. It seems like drinking anything would be helpful, but actually, our bodies are about 70% water. You just need like straight water. The reason why warm is important is that if you drink cold water, it can constrict the muscles in your GI and cause digestive problems. Like sometimes when people drink cold water on an empty stomach, they'll suddenly their stomachs will bloat up, and that's partly because it closes down, the blood vessels. The muscles clench in the gut, and it closes the blood vessels, and then you can't really, things don't move through the GI very well. But warm water will help. It also help a lot if you, tend towards constipation, because again, a lot of people they think like if they drink some really hard like coffee or tea with the caffeine, that will help, and it kind of does because caffeine will stimulate bile release into the colon and irritates the colon. But again, it's dehydrating you overall, so you're going to stay in this like loop, as opposed to drinking like a big glass of warm water. Okay. Now the thing is, and some people, I mean, I have a whole video on first beverage of the day, so you might get into that. Look at that if you really want to, add anything to water. But I know a lot of people, they come to me and they drink lemon water every day or apple cider vinegar in their water, and that's really not great for most people. Um, it's just too harsh. You're basically drinking acid water with either of those things. And I have a lot of people, when I get them off that habit, they just drink warm water instead of with lemon or apple cider vinegar. Their reflux clears up, their skin irritations and itching clear up. Like, again, when you're dehydrated and the first thing you drink is acid water, you're going to get acid and inflammation. You're basically pushing that, through your body. Besides that, both of those hard acids are going to, you know, be hard on the stomach and also hard on the teeth. So, but anyway, you might check out that video if that's something you want to look at. Then these, then some people after that will shower or bathe. Um, and everybody has a different thing about showering, bathing, when they like to do it. Some people definitely like to do it in the morning. It helps them wake up. Some people really like to do it in the evening because it helps them wind down. So depending on, you this might be the time to do it. Generally, Ayurveda suggests doing it in the morning so that it kind of not only freshens you up, but even like, cleans your aura, not just the physical body, but the energetic body. And then part of this might include skin brushing or Garshana, it's known as in Ayurveda, or warm oil massage, Abhyanga. And I have videos on both of those techniques if you're interested in having those in. Then there might be some type of exercise. Now, it doesn't have to be long. It could be 5 minutes. Some people really like to get their workout in the morning because it doesn't compete with anything and they like to kind of get it done, which is fine. But even just 5 minutes of gentle stretching or like taking a yoga pose or two that you like and just, relaxing into that and taking some deep breaths and, again, just sort of waking up the body, stimulating the body and the circulation. Again, the intensity, duration, and type will vary depending on the person. Okay. Then after that, getting dressed. And some people like to, again, some people, maybe the shower bath comes after the exercise. Depends on everybody. Okay. Then getting dressed. And again, the suggestion from Ayurveda is to focus on being neat, clean, and respectful of self and others. Okay. More than like dressing to impress, more than dressing to get attention. it's a subtle energy change that's important, okay, for both self and others. And then there is, and again, we've already started the day potentially in bed with some sort of intention setting and maybe a prayer. But then after that, again, there's a fairly um, concentrated time. And again, it might just be like 5 minutes, but it's very much focused on prayer, meditation, contemplation, maybe a mantra practice where you're fully awake and conscious. So again, the cleaning oneself, the hydration, the exercise, the shower bath, those are all in preparation for, again, meeting this time of prayer, meditation, contemplation, mantra. It might be like taking some spiritual book and reading just one page and really deeply considering it. Okay. So this is also important because, again, you're setting the energy for the day. And again, this sort of morning routine creates like you can think of it as like a little energy bubble. And if you can, you can try, do your best to maintain this kind of energy through the day. It should really, it can almost be like a energetic shield against, again, getting lost in a lot of negative energy when that's swirling around, or other people's energies, or negative conversations, or, if you're really, again, solid and centered in oneself, and again, not just the physical self, but the spiritual self. It's really important. Okay. Then after that, you might do your first meal. And again, think of the first meal as being nourishing and balancing rather than grab and go. Because usually when I see my patients, and they have this habit of grabbing and going with their food, usually that's an indication that they're, an excess vata person. Okay. And that's the first on my first page of my intake with people. It's like, what'd you have for breakfast? What'd you have for lunch? What'd you have for dinner? Usually when people tell me what they've had in the last 24 hours, I can usually guess what type they are just from that. So Vata people tend to be grab and go, or they tend to skip meals. So again, you may not have a big sense of hunger in the morning, so consider that. You might have medical issues, or you might certain goals or whatever. So consider that, but you want the first meal to be nourishing and balancing, not just like a afterthought, or, just sort of stuffing something down, unconsciously. Um, yeah. Okay. And it might be, like a warm cup of milk, even that would be nourishing and balancing, but, if you don't have much hunger in the morning, that's fine. You're not going to push your GI, necessarily. So the other thing, if you haven't picked up on that already, is that all of this, and again, start with maybe just one habit here. Okay. But another important thing is like not just what you're doing, but like how you're doing it. So especially if you can, bring up a sense of reverence as you're doing one or multiple things on this list. Okay. And then revering, your life, your energy, yourself as a sacred being. Okay. That in and of itself, even if you have a good routine, you like your routine, even just shifting your consciousness to, how can I really do this in a way where I'm revering, my life, my mission on the planet, you know, myself, and not like a, kind of a gloating, vain way or anything like that, but like truly as a sacred spiritual being, you know, here on this planet to do good things. Okay. Just even that can like change the energy of all these things you do, slow you down a little bit. Like, when sometimes even like when you do your shower, like you're really absorbing, the good energy that comes from that. Okay. So this is the morning routine, and then you go off and do your daily work, whatever that is. And again, for some people, the hardest part about this is just this idea, or switching up this idea to self-care comes first. Because if you have, fairly solid morning routine, I mean, this might be an hour or more, potentially. And maybe you have no routine, you just jump out of bed and go at it. And maybe just again starting with 5 minutes of something would plant the seed. But to, again, getting yourself and your energy, like prioritizing getting yourself and your energy straight and grounded before anything else happens in the day. Because then you'll be able to potentially bring that energy into everything else that you do, the decisions that you make, the conversations that you have. Yeah. Okay, so that's morning routine. Next slide. Okay, so this is evening routine. In a lot of ways, this mirrors the morning routine. Again, make sure that fits your lifestyle. Start slowly and then build. And again, it will change with the season probably. So when you get back from work, okay, you might do some stretching or exercise. Maybe you have some, like dogs or something, you walk them. And that also helps to switch your energy, because a lot of people, when they're in work mode, it's a different mode than potentially the beginning or end of their day. Although if we set, especially a good morning routine and bring that through the rest of the day, that's nice and ideal. But, the evening time is a time to start letting go of the day's work, letting go of the day's, outcomes or lack of outcomes or whatever, and getting back to self. Okay. So maybe some stretch exercise, walking, maybe a shower or bath, especially depending on what kind of work you do, or maybe you've already done that in the morning. But also maybe changing your clothes to, at home or home clothes or whatever, out of your work clothes. It can also like psychologically shift your energy into starting to wind down and allow your nervous system to relax. Having an evening meal, again, a set time every night can be helpful. Is usually ideal. Ideally, you're also finishing 3 hours before bed so that you have plenty of time to digest that and, decrease your chance of developing reflux as well. The evening meal, like I've actually found, I've tried in many, many occasions to set my wake up time and set my sleeping time. Usually it doesn't work very well for me. It doesn't really stick. But what did work for me was actually setting my evening meal time. Because if I set my evening meal, that really grounds me for some reason. And then, I don't typically, and then the light's changing, getting darker. So I have a few hours there where I might be doing, whatever I'm doing. Then I naturally want to like sleep, about 3.5 hours after that. So if I'm good about my evening meal time, my sleep time and wake up times are much better, which, it took me years to figure that out. And nobody had ever suggested it. And I sort of stumbled upon it. I was like, oh, maybe this is what I need to do all these years. So the other thing to think about in the evening is really get gentle lighting. So this is the opposite of full spectrum lighting. You don't want your full spectrum lights on in the evening. Maybe you put your lights on a timer, make them dimmer at a certain time. The other thing is you might actually use candles instead of full light bulbs that are, blasting light in the room. Because that'll start to, again, give a message to your brain that it's time to slow down, unwind and relax. And then in the evening too, like, this is essentially some free time. So maybe spend time with social connections or kids or pets, artwork, reading, studying, whatever you like to do to, again, fill yourself up with something positive. Okay. Also, like, kind of like in the morning, you want to unplug from your devices. But again, you're releasing influence of whatever is on the internet or on your phone, as much as possible, so that, like, again, you're not being drawn out by other people. Again, this might be another time to shower or bathe, either before all this or after all this. If not shower, breathing, maybe just like, again, washing the face, brushing the teeth. There might be a little gentle stretching or yoga involved. Again, not very long, not very intense. Usually don't want to do a hugely intense workout right before bed. Like if you have a more intense workout, you might do it like, again, after work, but before you eat. Because if you do an intense workout, especially after you eat your meal, like that can cause, problems. So, just a little bit of stretching, yoga, potentially to unwind. Gentle music is helpful because gentle music, helps to increase the neurotransmitter GABA, which is a a kind of a sedating or anti-anxiety type of neurotransmitter. So, like when we sing lullabies to kids, that actually, raises GABA in the brain and helps them relax and go to sleep. And again, this is another chance for prayer, meditation, contemplation, kind of like the beginning of the day. So again, if you bookend your day, beginning and end of the day with this type of activity, that can be very helpful. And then some people really need to prep for sleep. I mean, some people just like drop into their bed because they're so tired. Some people need to really get that together. We call that sleep hygiene sometimes. So sometimes you really want to make sure the temperature of the room is, appropriate and comfortable. Again, you want to decrease lights, remove devices, make sure you have comfy clothes and bedding. If you're the kind of person who's always thinking about the next thing to do, and that keeps you up rather than allowing you to relax and go to sleep, you might think about writing, just making a short list and then leaving the list by the side of your bed just to get the past list out of your head so you can relax and let go to sleep. And also just do some deep breathing. That can help a lot. I've actually given that to people where they just do deep breathing at night and they don't need to take even supplements or whatever to sleep. The deep breathing helps them relax and focus on, something physical instead of the things running around in their head. And a lot of people can go to sleep. Um, so yeah. Okay. So again, this evening routine, either the morning or evening routine, whichever is going to be easiest to start with or most appealing, um, just to make it easier. But again, slowly planting the seed and then considering these different things, to again create really at least the beginning and or end of the day, um, is something solid and bringing you energy and balancing you out rather than just constantly going and getting burned down. Okay. All right. So as always, thanks so much for stopping by, listening to one of my talks. I appreciate all the different support you guys give my work and the channel. So, all the subscribes and likes and lovely comments and shares. I'm always amazed at how many people share my videos. So thanks so much. I guess you want to support other people and share the information. So that's really great. Yeah, some people send in donations. So thank you for all of that. I do have another YouTube channel on Vedic astrology, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. The name of that channel is Light Vedic Astrology, so that's out there too if that's interesting to you. Okay, so hope you found this helpful and useful and interesting. And until the next one, take good care. Namaste.